Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen. I'm joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw. Played 11 seasons in the NHL for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. This is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. Come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey and a few other subjects now and then. We're going to start with hockey this week. Tom, our good friend John Shannon has reported that, Kadri has a deal with the New York Islanders. It's not going to be announced till later this week, but he says it's done.
Wow. Big news. Lou Lamoriello, like people were critical, and I was a little critical of Lou too. Although it's kind of hard to be critical of Lou Lamoriello with his history. But the way he went at the trade deadline, not getting rid of some older players, in fact, re-upping some of those guys, kind of made you wonder what he was up to. But this is a major thing. I like that a lot. I like the player a lot. I don't know if I call him a number one centerman. Do you call Kadri a number one centerman? I think we talked about this before, right?
Well, I don't think he is. He's always been a very good number two centerman, because he adds that extra element of tenacity and, he gets under your skin.
Yep.
And I think that's, you really kind of want that with your number two centerman. So I think basically it'll be Barzal and Kadri, I think, are complementary centers. Barzal gives you that pure skill guy, and then you have a guy like Kadri who comes out after there and says, hey, it's not going to be fun for you to get to our net. So,
the Ranger fans are going to hate him. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Really good. Good stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, as long as John Shannon is to believe, and he's been wired in for a very long time. He was a former NHL executive, and then ended up working. I think he was on the hot stove for a lot of years on Hockey Night in Canada. He, had a radio show as well. He usually kind of knows his stuff, but that's kind of what he reported, that it's done, and we all know Lou Lamoriello likes to announce things in the order in which he wants to let him get out. So, like, I'm sure Noah Dobson's deal has been done for a while. I'm sure it's for a little bit less money than Dobson would want, but and I'm sure it's a bridge deal. I mean, the only way you could do that is, he had to get, I think, Dobson signed for a deal that's probably started with a 4, when he's probably worth at least 5, maybe more, depending on how many years you're asking for.
Imagine being the young players sitting across the desk from Lou Lamoriello, and Lou's telling me the way things are. Like, and he's so, like you mentioned it before with who was it, Parise, right? How Lou handled it when he left. So it isn't just like being mean and intimidating, but his reputation, the way he conducts himself. If you're one of his guys, that he will die for you. Like if you're in his group, then he's going to take care of you. But at the same time, when Lou tells you the way things are going to be, that's the way things are going to be. Apparently, when maybe you knew this already, it's not a big deal, but when he went to work with the Islanders, his deal with the owners there was he runs everything. He is the boss. Everything that gets done there. I mean, he's the man. I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's the way. Like, he wants to do it Lou's way, and he believes in it, and he believes that it's a map to success, and it's hard to argue. Even though they don't have a Stanley Cup in Toronto, I think he was part of building what is a pretty darn good, entertaining hockey team there. So certainly a contender. They just don't have the final pieces. And, to be honest with you, and we've not talked about this, but we've reached the point in the NHL where, there's 32 teams that are trying to win. Like, I think you can be very successful and not win a cup. Like, that's the ultimate, delineation between being great and not great, is to win that cup. But, you could be a really good team and not ever win a cup. Just because there are, 32 teams now, the odds say it's far more difficult to win a cup now, to go that. I mean, you got to beat 31 other groups that also believe they can win the cup. So I think it's a lot harder now, and we're going to end up with, more exceptional players that never won a cup than ever before.
Executives too. Look at David Poile down in Nashville, right?
Yeah,
I think both of us think the world of him as a person and as a general manager.
Sure, he's a great example of that. I think there are people who win the cup that just aren't nearly as worthy as some who didn't win it.
Sure.
I think that's just going to happen, where you end up in the right place at the right time, and you don't lock out, and I think that's kind of one of the issues. Well, I'll just give you a great example of this. I did a couple of stories on the NHL Network top 20 center list. And if you look at that top center list, I think some of the people that are on there, it speaks to the fact that their team isn't very good. And so I looked at that, and there were only 4 players on that list whose teams did not make the playoffs last season. One of them was JT Miller, whose Canucks didn't make the playoffs, and also Pedersen, of course, also on the Canucks, they didn't make the playoffs. Jack Hughes, but Jack Hughes had 26 goals in 49 games last year, had a breakthrough season. He certainly deserved to be on there as well. And the fourth one is one of your all-time favorites, Jack Eichel. And Eichel was listed, and the way I viewed that, because the story I wrote was about Dylan Larkin, who was not on the list. And probably shouldn't have been. When you go the first 11 players or 12 players on that list, they're unassailable. They're for sure on that list. And that, you really got to get down to 15 until you can get, Larkin into the conversation, 15 or 16. And so, but Larkin's team isn't any good. And my conclusion was to the fans in Detroit was, you can't even talk about this till the Red Wings team gets any better, because that's sort of a minimum requirement, I think, to be, on that list. But as I was looking at players whose teams aren't very good and who are on the list, and I think Eichel was on the list simply because, as I've talked about before, in his first 5 seasons, was an elite center, 27 goals averaged, which is, puts him up in the top 10 in that regard. Because centers are known, a lot of them, a lot more for playmaking than for goals. Then the last 2 years, obviously, he's been hurt. But they've tended to look kind of beyond that and have put him on that list. But the thing that I also looked at too, and this kind of surprised me, I just assumed that the majority of centers on that list will have won the cup. And how many centers do you think actually out of the top 20 centers that were deemed, the players that were deemed the top 27s have actually won a Stanley Cup?
I'm going to go 8.
Yeah, it was 9. So, so almost half have won. But still, for some reason, I was thinking it was going to be 12 or 13. But, you got the 2 Penguins, Crosby and Malkin, and then you got 2 Lightning and Stamkos and Point.
Right.
But Connor McDavid hasn't won one. Austin Matthews hasn't won one. Draisaitl hasn't won one. There are a lot of, Kadri just got one this year, and he's on that list, by the way.
Oh, he's on the list. Who would you take off the list? Is there one player that you would take off the list to put Larkin on?
No, I really couldn't come up with one, and because I think the argument would be, the way I've said it is this year, I think there are GMs right now, because of Eichel's injury and not knowing where he is exactly, that might trade Eichel for Larkin. But I don't think it's the majority. I think most people would take Eichel over Larkin. So
as much as I'm critical of Eichel, the upside for Eichel is pretty good.
Yeah. And he's a year younger than Larkin as well. So I just really couldn't come up with one. I mean, Jack Hughes, too much upside. Jack Hughes was down at 17. Ryan O'Reilly, too much of a two-way forward. He was down near the bottom as well. I'll tell you another one that wasn't on there was Anze Kopitar. I think we all like Anze Kopitar. Now his Kings were on a team, but he's an older center now, and they just
was Zibanejad on the list, the Rangers?
Oh yeah. He was, I think, 11 or 12, somewhere in that range. Nice. So yeah.
Patrice Bergeron, they still have him on the list. I know he's getting older now.
Yeah, how could you have a top 20 list and not have Bergeron?
I know. I agree. I agree totally. Yeah.
No, I think he was. Again, I don't remember exactly. I think he was 7 or 8, somewhere in there. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the list was. We could probably call it up and maybe even talk about it a little bit. But the list, as you would expect it to be, there's Matthews and McDavid and Draisaitl and Stamkos and Nathan McKinnon. But this is the one point that I made about Dylan Larkin. I you know how much I value even strength goals. I think it's hard to score even strength goals in the National Hockey League.
Mm-hmm.
I think to me that's the,
and
I do value. So
it was for me, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, it is for everyone, and I value goals more than assists. Like if I had my way, like goals would count like 2 points, and
Sure.
Assists would be 1. It's just hard to score in the NHL, particularly at even strength. And Dylan Larkin, there was only 8 centers who scored more even strength goals than Dylan Larkin. So I think that says something.
Yeah,
now,
totally.
I'm not sure that it was enough. There were a lot of guys that had a great season. Like JT Miller, I think, is on there for the season he had last year, which is really remarkable. He was in the 90s, and he scored more goals than Dylan Larkin last year. Ian Pedersen also scored more goals than Dylan Larkin did last year. So, and Larkin got injured. Now you got to factor in, I think, some intangibles with Larkin. He's a captain. The Red Wings kind of go as he goes, but the Red Wings didn't go very well. So, it's nice to say that about him, but, he couldn't get them. And that's not his fault. The team just simply isn't good enough. But I agree. But
did you see where Jonathan Huberdeau donated his brain to get the?
Yeah, I sure do. That's on my list of things I want to talk about. Yeah, for sure. We want to get into that because I found that really kind of neat because he's not that kind of player. You know what I mean? Like guys that usually are the Proberts and those are the kind of things that played. He hasn't been that. But anyway, let's. Well, I guess are we done with this subject? Maybe we are. So yeah. Okay.
We got to talk about the moon. We got to talk about the moon landing too. I think it's fake.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move then to Huberdeau since you brought that up. I guess I just didn't take the cue there. You were trying to tell me you want to talk about someone else and something else I didn't do it. So I always want to talk about it in the order I want to talk about it. So, but just as I said, I thought the Huberdeau thing. I think it was. First of all, I think it's very enlightened. Yes. Like I think we do need to know more about this, and the more brains they study, and it'll be hopefully a very, 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 very long time before that study on Huberdeau's brain is going to be done. But I like that. I mean, I think when you get like a star player who isn't involved in fighting, doesn't play a particularly physical game, I think it's really good that we get more players like that.
Makes me think I should do that too. Anyway, so why not? Like, I'm not going to be using the brain once I'm gone anyway. So
yeah, well, I mean, there's certain to be a lot of things to be said for that. So
yeah, where I think there's a hospital up in Boston, I think, right, where they donate the brains. And that's
Well, my father-in-law did that. He had nothing to do with sports, but he donated his brain to science.
Did you ever see the results?
Yes, we did. We got a full report on what they found and all the different things it was used for. I mean, because there's a lot of studies that are being done on the brain for a variety of reasons. So there wasn't any sign of CTE, but I wouldn't have expected that.
Right.
But he was not an athlete, but or wasn't involved in any physical type work. But a lot of the things they studied went to other studies on the brain. But he died like about 5 years ago or so.
Oh, that's cool. He did that. So, what prompted him to do that?
He was that kind of guy. He was kind of eclectic and he had a lot of interest. And he once read the study. Actually, he was part of it while he was alive. Oh. Because one of the things that he did, he joined this group. So they came and tested him through hit the last 25 years of his life.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, they went in and looked at his brain afterward to see if, to connect the dots a little bit.
Wow,
So,
interesting.
so it was a neat study. One year he invited my wife and I to go with him. They had a banquet of all the people who had donated their brains, and there was a discussion, like a few brain neurologists came in and talked about some of the things they had learned from this very lengthy. This study's been going on for years and years and years. So there's a lot going on in the medical world that we don't know anything about.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, since we've kind of got off on this subject, and I think this is just really, I wondered whether I should even talk about this, but I don't think my daughter would mind on this, because I think it is important that people understand about these issues, because I think it's going to shock some people. My daughter has a challenging disease. She's had it for 12 years. Originally, it was called aplastic anemia, but it's now sort of morphed into another PNH type disease, which is an immune system disease, and it has to do with the making of platelets and whole blood cells, and her body doesn't create. And she's always had to deal with it. She's relapsed 3 or 4 times and has had chemo that has kind of brought her back into it. But there is a drug that she takes in order to regulate all that, and it has a lot of harsh side effects. And this time around, there's a new drug that's been in about 3 or 4 years ago, and it's an infusion. It's done every 3 months, and she now uses that because it has less harsh side effects, and it's doing the job. She's back in remission and so forth, and this has been going on now for almost a full year with this new drug. And I didn't know. I knew it was an expensive drug because this second diagnosis it's a rare disease. So they don't spend a lot of time researching it. So they try to get it back with the cost of these drugs. She told me yesterday, and we had not had this conversation, because they haven't put her on this drug that's $500,000 a month.
Session?
$500,000 a month. They haven't put her on that drug. Wow. And I knew that because they do that as a very last resort. But this infusion, I was talking to her about it, and the retail price of this infusion that she gets every 3 months, she'll get it again in a week, is $215,000.
Every 3 months.
Every 3 months. Now, her insurance company, she actually had a chance. They switched insurance at her company that she works for. And I remember she called me and she said, I'm trying to decide what to do here. It's a little bit pricey to get the best insurance coverage. And I said, well, you have to, Kels, like you don't really have any choice. And you don't always get this option. You won't get this option, a year from now. You're only getting it because they're accepting your people in without anything. And so she did take that. So her cost, because she has, superb insurance coverage, is zero on that. But her insurance company only pays $37,000 for that $215,000. Now that's still a significant amount. Yeah. But I think the reason I wanted to bring that up is, I know a lot of people talk about the political issue of, drug costs and a big pharmaceutical and all that. So anyway, this is a real-time, real-person example of why there is a lot of discussion in politics about changing the approach of pharmaceutical companies and insurances and how it works. And, the fact that her insurance company only has to pay $37,000, like if she didn't have really good insurance coverage, if she had when I left USA Today, I was in kind of a 70-30 thing. Like my insurance paid 70% and I paid 30%. Well, would that have meant that, my payment on this would have been $7,000 or $10,000 every 3 months? What would that have meant for me if I had to
who
take
pays
that?
The rest? If the insurance company only pays $37,000, who pays the rest?
I don't know. Well, I'm sure it's discounted. I mean, that's the way Like, and I know this again from all the years that we were involved in her hospital bills, because in the olden days when she was on my coverage, we ended up having to pay a percentage of it all. And, insurance companies negotiate their own deals with hospitals and such for what percentage they're going to pay. They never pay full freight. And then in some states, there are laws that prohibit the hospitals or insurance companies from passing the rest on 100% to the patient. In other words, like if you have a $50,000 bill and you negotiate with the hospital, the insurance company, that we're only going to pay 32,000 and there's 18,000 left. Some states say, no, you can't. There's a name for it. I just don't have it on the top of my head. You can't charge the patient $18,000. That's just too unfair, and you negotiate it down with that. Not every state has that rule, by the way, but in Michigan you do have that rate. So we ended up paying. I think as I recall, when we were paying all that, if the hospital was 50,000 and the insurance paid 35, we would end up paying like 6,000 or something like that. So it wouldn't be the full freight. So it's a very complicated formula. But I can tell you, I'm so glad I'm on Medicare now. Like, I never thought I would say that. Right. But because you hear so much, like, and through these, wait till you get the Medicare. What a nightmare that is. And I'm sure it's complicated for doctors who have to do a lot of paperwork. But I've been on it, and I have had a lot of doctor visits, and I've been on it, over a year now, and I think it's tremendous. When I end up have tests and everything, and for my prescriptions, I'm paying, $5, $9, $18, those kind of things. I've not had any bills in the hundreds or any of that nature, which I used to have with my, old insurance. So I'm a big proponent of Medicare. Like, don't be afraid of it if you're older and getting there. It's now, what I didn't do is take the Advantage Medicare, which my wife got on. Hers has been a little more complicated, still better than the insurance we had before for many, many years. But, her bills, like when you take the privatized Medicare, it seems like they want to argue with you, just like the old insurance companies did, about what you're going to pay. And, we had she had to have x-rays. She got hurt playing soccer. And their idea of what a reasonable amount of money to pay for x-rays and our idea of what a reasonable rate were two different things. Where with my Medicare, which is just plain old straight, no Medicare Advantage, I just turn over my card and then I get charged like, $5.
Nice.
So, whatever it is, $8. So
speaking of old, I should say like that about him, but see where Wayne Gretzky's getting sued?
No. What is Wayne getting sued about?
Yeah, he got involved in some, I think it was a drink that is supposed to be a weight loss drink. And he's being accused of lying that he lost like 35 pounds in 2 months or something like that. Apparently, he had stock in the company, and some other people had stock in the company. By him saying that this price of the stock went up, which he was supposed to, then he would benefit from. And some other shareholder is suing him because he put a whole bunch more money. I think this is it. He put a whole bunch more money into the stock because of what Wayne said. And it's come out now. He claims anyways, it's not true. Wayne did not lose 35 pounds. So.
Yeah, Wayne has always been in relatively pretty good shape, but, I'm sure he could have gained 35 pounds. And
yeah. But I guess the claim is losing the 35 pounds in 2 months or whatever it is. This gentleman is saying it just never happened. So
yeah, I tell you, having known, and I know you too, having known Wayne a long time, that doesn't sound like something he would be involved in. But I don't know, so I really don't.
Definitely that his character would tell you that he just.
Yeah,
I mean, that is the scary thing about getting involved in that kind of stuff, though, right? I mean, it's with a player of that stature or a person of that stature, you're going to be a target too. So.
Yeah, well, but going back to where we started this conversation about Huberdeau, is like, I really do think this is a very nice message sent to not only athletes but people who just the importance that you end up helping research with things like and this week with Anne Heche, the actress, passing away, they waited to take her off life support until they found donors, because she was a very strong advocate of organ donation.
Yeah, you're right with the Huberto, right? Because it made me, for instance, think to myself, well, why am I not donating my brain?
Yeah.
Like,
no, that's the bonus. Another hockey thing I wanted to talk about, I saw it on social media. Sean Simpson reported that the actual cost now for Chychrun is really getting down to 2 first round picks. It's kind of a Seth Jones deal is what they're sort of looking for. And it reminded me of, because I know there are some who are not sure that Chychrun is going to reach that elite level. But I remember the famous Ken Holland line of, I don't like him very well at $7 million, but I love him at 4.5. And I do think that Chychrun sort of is in that description, just because, maybe you're concerned that he's not going to reach the level you think he is. But at 4.5 and having more years left for you to have him without having to worry about his contract, I think that's very much an attraction, for contending teams. And, you factor in then his size, that he had a 19-goal season. So I think that this guy is a valuable asset. And I think that teams see him in that regard. They have had a lot of interest in him. And again, I think it's the combination of his contract in a size and potential and so forth.
Yeah, the only negative I heard about him was the inconsistency, but he's a young player too. Being a young player, the people I talked to was more like, had one good year and one so-so year.
Well, and when we first started talking about, he was 23. Not I think he may have turned 24. Right. And it's funny, but that does change things. When you're saying he's 23, you're going, oh man, 23. Then you're 24, and then you're going, well, 24. He's more established. It's funny what perception versus the reality.
Yeah, and I think this has changed a little bit too. But it used to be that 25 was kind of the magic number for defensemen. Once you got to be 25 years old, what you were at that point, now you're established as a player. That's who you are as a player. So I think it's changed a little bit. That number maybe dropped a little bit because the young players are coming in and playing more now. But
the other thing too, I wanted to bring up too. I don't know, you haven't been watching the World Juniors, but the Simon Edvinsson, who is the Red Wings' next big rookie, he was an Eisenman draft pick, 6th overall. He's 6'6", and the projection is he is going to play this year. And I have the impression that Steve Eisenman is excited about him as he was about Moritz Seider. And the idea of the pairing of Seider, 6'4" Seider, and the 6'6" Edvinsson is really gives Eisenman a lot of hope. He likes both of these players a lot.
Well, if he's as good as Seider, then he had something else. Seider. I remember when you first told me about Seider. Man, he's good. Oof.
Yeah. Well, anyway, they're different kinds of players, but what I wanted to bring up about Seider, I wanted to get your input on this is. It used to be the idea of, when you get size, you're going to trade mobility.
Yeah.
We associate skating with 5'9" guys. And you can be small as long as you're fast. But this Edvinsson guy at 6'6" can skate. I mean, he is an NHL skater like right now. Like he can really skate. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what level of impact. He's only 19, and I try to temper my enthusiasm because actually Moritz Seider had a year on him when he arrived. He had already played. People have forgotten this already. He had played 1 year. Seider played 1 year in the AHL. Then in the pandemic he went back and played a year in Sweden, even though he was German, and then he dominated there. Well, Edvinsson has not played in the American Hockey League. Played the 1 year in Sweden, but he did it a year younger than Seider did. So, and that year really does make a difference. And I think the acclimation, the adjustment to the North American game, we shouldn't expect him to be as polished as Sider was. So,
Sider's a beast. I love watching him play. Oh man, he's good.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to see what he does this year because I said this all season to people, like he just piled up the points and he really didn't put much emphasis on his offensive play.
Yeah.
Like he didn't take chances. He stayed up high on the blue line. He didn't carry the puck deep into the zone. Like he can do that, but he didn't. The only time you saw a glimpse of that is in the overtime games when he made some remarkable plays, and you thought to yourself, oh my gosh, like he can do that and be the beast that he is defensively. So, so it's going to be interesting to see, what he does. So we've crossed off Chikrin. We've crossed off.
How about really quickly, see if you know, have we had any result on Evander Kane's case there, the arbitration case? Wow, it's gone a long time, man.
No. Yeah. And I brought this up to a GM and he laughed and he said, no, you're right. This is the only case I can ever remember when neither side wants this resolved anytime soon.
Yeah. There's no
because
hurry,
this is a mess for everyone. Like, you can say Kane will end up getting, more money if he wins this, but what if Edmondson says, no, that's too much money for us. We can't make it work. I'm not giving up this guy, because I'd have to make you work. And I'm not giving anything to the San Jose Sharks. I mean, they'll have to give us something. Yeah. So I think the only way this works is the Sharks will have to eat some of his cap space. And, if they end up losing and trying to make this work.
So just so everybody understands, Evander Kane was playing in San Jose, had a pretty lengthy contract with some pretty big numbers, and he got some trouble with gambling and some other issues. So San Jose voided the contract. The NHL said they could void the contract. He then sat out and then ultimately signed with Edmonton and just signed a new deal there. There was an arbitration case that he filed and the Players Association filed, saying that they should not have been able to void the contract. So now it's with an arbitrator. It's gone on for months. Like Kevin said, there's no hurry for it. Nobody's in any hurry to get it done. But at some point, there's going to be a resolution to it. And then, what happens then? Is the contract, if Kane wins, then the contract in San Jose, does it go back in place? Well, that contract's with San Jose. You can't have two contracts. He's already signed another one with Edmonton. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, and he doesn't, he likes it where he's at. He was happy to play in Edmonton now. And
there's no way
he can't go back to San Jose. They don't want him. And what if somebody decides to be a stinker? He's sort of the Sharks, and I'm sure. I hear a plane overhead. I'm at my lake house, and we have a plane that actually lands on our lake, and he comes right down, and lands sort of down by me, and I think maybe I guess that is.
Speaking of landings, do you believe in the moon landing? Do you think we
of course they did not. I will say my grandmother did not. She at the time, I remember my grandmother was well in her 80s then, laughing but believing, I think, that she felt that they were in the middle of the desert.
Because there's a picture in the New York Post where somebody that's a non-believer is looking in the at the reflection of the mirror of the face mask. And they enlarged it and claim that they saw some guy standing out in the middle of the desert. It's a great picture. You go on the New York Post website, you can see the picture.
I mean, all of those things have been debunked. There's in fact, you can find the website, but they have, scientists that explain all of the things that people have come up with. I'm sure that one's in there as well, because I've heard of that one before. So, but I mean, what I always say about those type of things is there would have to be too many people involved.
That's true.
It would have come out to have that kind of thing. That's why, there's once you get beyond one person, the chances of keeping a secret seem to be next to impossible. So
where are you at in the Kennedy shooting then in Dallas? Conspiracy?
Well, I mean, what I've said about it, and I feel like if there was any level of conspiracy, it was a very closed one. because we've had so many people that could have come out and said so. Like if there were 3 people involved in it, then maybe something could have happened. I don't know, but the Oswald trip to Russia, all those things. Certainly, I read all those, and you wonder what was going on. And having grown up in that era, and I remember my relatives talking about the controversy of a Catholic in the in the White House and all those kinds of things. So. And I think it was a lot easier back then to close ranks than it is now. Yeah. So,
I watched the video. I watched the video on the single bullet theory about how the bullet had to change, in their opinion, had to change courses and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the Zapruder film and the grassy knoll. And I will say this though, I went there. I don't know, maybe you've been there too. I know a lot of players when they take that trip to Dallas go to the book depository. The window to the street below, my observation to the people I was with at the time was like, I've never fired a gun in my life, but I think I could have made that shot. It's really not a second floor window or whatever it was down to the street level. And you're just kind of staring out and you think about, being at the carnival and, holding a gun and thinking, yeah, I mean, for a guy who had, been in the military and stuff like that, that shot seemed very doable. Like it wasn't like he was, 180 yards away. He was staring down on pavement and, it felt like it was like 20 yards or so. I mean, it was probably more than that, but it didn't seem unrealistic to me from that window to the street. So.
Interesting. I know you got to run, right? 11 o'clock, you're going?
Yeah, I do. I've got to run, but we do appreciate everyone from tuning in. We went off the rails a little bit as usual, but that's part of who we are. So we appreciate you listening to our hockey tales and our medical woes and our conspiracy theories and all that kind of stuff. We're not nutcases, although we certainly talk about things of this nature.
We got to cover all the bases, Kevin. Cover all the bases.
Yeah, cover all the bases. So thanks for tuning in. Won't be long. Training camp in a month. If you want to read me, I'm at DetroitHockeyNow.com, also HockeyBuzz.com.
And if you would like to listen to the radio version of this show, you can go to radio.co at 365 Sports. We'll see everybody on Monday.